Well, welcome back. And we now present to you our last panel for the property management sector, titled The Strategies to Curtail Energy Costs at Properties. Now, this panel will take a look at energy saving solutions, the technologies that are being adapted, the energy benchmarking, and the shift in the landlord-tenant attitude towards energy consumption. Before we begin, I would like to introduce you to the speakers, starting with Mr. Fadi Nwilati. Now, among being a board member and advisor of several real estate developments and investment funds, Mr. Fadi is the CEO of Kaizen Asset Management. He brings with him over 12 years of investment and real estate experience within the Middle East. His vast experience extends over the commercial and residential sectors and includes development management, project management, and investment management within the property sector. We also have with us Mr. Pablo Izquierdo, the Senior Manager, Energy Audit and Consultancy of Engie Solutions. He is an experienced sustainability consultant with a focus on energy and waste management. He has also developed corporate sustainability strategies and programs for the government entities in the UAE, as well as detailed energy and waste strategies for the master plan developments. Also joining the session this afternoon is Dr. Hassam Chaudhry, the Assistant Professor at the School of Energy, Geoscience, Infrastructure and Society, and the Director of Studies, Dubai for Architectural Engineering. He is a fellow of the Higher Education Academy and is an active in undergraduate teaching and research, particularly in the area of energy in buildings and the use of computational fluid dynamics and thermal modeling. Dr. Chaudhry specializes in advancing wind-driven energy and heat transfer techniques for ventilation within the built environment. Last but not least, our moderator this afternoon, Mr. Corentin Soistier, the Sustainability, Energy and Strategic Projects Senior Director of Honeywell Building Technologies for Middle East, Turkey and Africa. In this capacity, Mr. Corentin leads the development and execution of Honeywell Building Technologies, Sustainability and Energy Growth Strategy for the META region. Now, Mr. Corentin has more than 17 years of experience at multinational technology firms in Europe and the Gulf. And with a background in technology, Mr. Corentin has been executing operational strategies in emerging markets. So viewers, please note that you can post in your questions in the chat box. So do let us know who you're addressing the question to, and our panel will take them on accordingly. And we also have an event feed where you can take the discussion post the session as well. Do let us know your comments and your feedback about the session. Over to you, Mr. Corentin.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. So first of all, I'm very pleased to host this very good panel with specialists and experts from the industry. So let's start. I think we are all excited to cover this very important topic for Middle East and across the different continent. I think this topic has been a rising topic over the last 10-15 years, but I think it's becoming even more critical to understand how we can improve energy efficiency within the building. So let me put a bit of context. As you all know, utility expenses are one of the most controllable expenses in commercial building. And on average, commercial building wastes around 30% of energy consumption, mainly due to inefficiency and lack of proper management within the building. I would like to start and ask the question to Mr. Fadi is, what initiative developers, investors, tenants have taken or are taking to improve energy efficiency at their properties?
Thank you, Corentin. I think as a starting point for us when looking at initiatives, we need to understand first the root causes of energy wastage. To me, I see three root causes in energy wastage, particularly in this part of the world. First being the lack of incentive. There is a clear disconnect between the person paying for energy and the person who is benefiting from energy. We see that in service charges, for example, in freehold buildings where landlords pay for utility consumption of common areas, but the beneficiaries may not necessarily be the landlords. They're usually in 50% of the cases, the tenants. In commercial buildings, in most of the commercial buildings, at least that we are exposed to, don't have individual meters for each commercial tenant, and therefore the landlord also ends up paying for those utility costs, and there is no incentive, economical incentive for the tenant to really save energy. So number one is lack of incentive. The second root cause that we see is building design, or maybe I should say over design, particularly when it comes to cooling systems and lighting. I sit on various value engineering meetings and always argue with designers, particularly mechanical and electrical designers, on the capacities that are being considered. Designers are always concerned that the equipments and systems that are being proposed may not be sufficient to provide the necessary capacity once the building is completed, and therefore they actually increase the capacity by 20 to 30% of what is actually required. And in some cases, I've seen it at even 40%. And the third root cause is, as you said quite rightly, is the lack of active management of energy. There is a clear lack of accountability in the market as to who's responsible for reducing energies. Is it the MEP service provider? Is it the property manager? And I think a lot of property managers take utility bills as a given, and take the systems in the property also as a given, instead of trying to improve on those systems and use technology to minimize wastage. I think first, when we understand the root causes, then we're able to really look at each building separately when trying to come up with an initiative to save energy, because there is no winning formula. I think everyone is waiting for a winning formula, one solution that can come in and just magically save the energy in the building, but there is no winning formula. A, you need to understand the root causes, and then B, you need to really come up with an energy saving plan that takes the building circumstances into consideration. I can speak forever on this topic, but I'll give the chance.
So maybe thanks, Fadi. So linked to what you just said around the root causes. So Mr. Dr. Hassam and Pablo, what could be the roadblock to implement? If we have identified the root cause, what could be the roadblock that can explain that we are not able to drive better energy efficiency, from over-speccing or not having the right accountability? What could be those roadblocks? What are those roadblocks?
Yeah, I would say, like, well, the first one that you say is the one of the points that Fadi made was the lack of meters. It's true. Sometimes you don't know. I mean, those bills. You would be surprised how many times you go to a building and you ask for the utility bills, and that simple question already starts kind of opening eyes, and is like, where do you mean? I'm the facility manager, I'm not responsible for the bills. Or I am the accounting department, I just have dirhams, but I don't have kilowatt hours because I don't know what that is. That kind of lack of understanding, and that is in the bills that everyone receives regardless, okay? Because that is a given. When you start saying, have you submitted this part or this other part or this other part, to try to understand, because you know that this big piece of machinery, of equipment there is actually consuming a lot of things, and you tell them, do you know how that operates? And the answer is clearly no idea. I don't know how much that consumes. So definitely that submetering can be a way of addressing that lack of knowledge of where the energy is actually going. Because once you understand where it is going, then you can tackle the issue much better, definitely, on knowing how that works. To one of the other points that Fadi was making, who is responsible to save, he says, people doesn't know. Well, the answer to that, I think, is everyone, and that is as easy as that as well. So so everyone is responsible. So the landlord should save on the common areas for the benefit of his common areas, for his efficiency, for his the better management of the assets and the hardware that he has installed. And the tenant should save because he's going to pay typically his bills. And if he doesn't pay the bills, it's typically because he's not metered. Because otherwise, I'm pretty sure that just for the benefit of the greens, of the common grounds, someone is benefiting. And at the end of the day, the ones that are doing their work, they say they should raise their hands and say, no, I'm not taking this. I would like to have it metered. Okay. And the methodology that the understanding the building and the lack of methodology. Well, there is a methodology, which is to carry out an energy audit to understand the building itself and to actually, it's not chocolate for all, or it's not like the silver bullet of the solution that by doing this exactly in every single building, regardless, it's going to work. So I think the energy audit will identify the potential energy savings solutions that are in each of the buildings, and it will customize the technical and the economic analysis for them. Okay.
Dr. Hassam, any additional comment from your hand?
I mean, so from my end, I mean, I completely agree with Fadi and Pablo on the sub-metering aspect, because we are, so if I look at myself from an academic perspective, and when we teach young generation, the students, everybody is aware about the energy crisis. Everybody is aware that there is a need to reduce energy costs, consumption, but there is a lack of measures still taken. So the question then becomes, how can we do it now? If we look at the very technical solutions, the MEP ones, like how Pablo was mentioning, a big box on your roof and HVAC system, facilities manager, not every time knowing how it works, how would we expect a common user in a building or house to know how much energy uses and how to save it? I am a big advocate for smart meters, tracking devices, energy tracking software that is simple enough to understand for a normal user to understand how much kilowatt hour is being used and what can they do to save it. Because if that is not in place, the energy bill alone will not be enough just to save the energy, because not everybody is a services engineer, not everybody is a building physicist. So if you implement the best air compressors with the best heat recovery systems that can save you 50% of the energy on paper, we will never know if it's doing the same thing when in practice, unless there is a way to check it. So one of the things that I would like to add to the conversation is the use of energy modeling. You know, in the last decade or so, energy modeling software have become quite advanced. Autodesk and IES and Rhinos are leading it. More and more people are now aware about how to use it. You have more accurate weather files available. You have a better range of inputs available. If you are a good energy modeler, you can understand how much energy your building or your space is going to consume. And the first part about really tracking down or reducing the energy cost is to really understand where that energy wastage is happening. If it's before the build, I would definitely recommend the use of more modeling. But if it's an in-build on an on-build situation, then we do need better energy trackers, because it is really hard to get hold of the bills. And even if you get hold of them, the breakdown is not detailed enough for everybody to understand where that energy wastage is happening, whether it's in the M, in the P, or in the E. You know, so we do need better energy trackers. So far, I would just like to add this topic. Thank you.
So very interesting. So we are talking a lot about solution metering, smart metering, tracking the information, talk about modeling. So it looks like software is taking a very important aspect on improving the energy efficiency, better monitoring the building. Where do you think the technology should evolve or will evolve to improve the information tracking around energy consumption, around energy optimization? Where do you think how do you think we should use this technology better within the different buildings?
So currently, the environment of energy generation around the world is a centralized form of generation, where you have a central government or private entity supplying, and then you have your demand for it. Now, if that continues, it is very difficult for a common demand or a common user to understand how to even make use of the technology, because they do not know the source of that energy. We need to break down into a decentralized version where smart metering gadgets, like how they have, so we did make a start on it. We do have energy performance certificates for appliances. that give us an idea about how much kilowatt hour is being used by this particular appliance. We need a more digital form of it, which can live track the data about how much energy is being used, because there are a set of loads in a building that many people don't know about. It's called the phantom loads. Just by simply unplugging your unwanted appliances at night can really help you save up to 5% of energy in a month. But for the fact that many users cannot see it, many of us have plugged in appliances at night, even when we switch them off, thinking that we are not using energy, but the reality is that it is still consuming power. So for a user to understand how to start by reducing their phantom loads, we do need an energy tracking gadget. Now, when it comes to the high level solutions, we are all well aware of, if we look at the HVAC sector, we do need variable frequency drives on our air compressors to make sure that we have demand control ventilation. If it runs at full load, even if it's the best air comp you have, it will still use a lot of energy. When it comes to lighting, switching to programmable lighting, switching to LEDs, making sure you use more artificial light, natural light rather than artificial. When it comes to water, use heat recovery, because for a normal HVAC unit, 80 to 90% of energy is lost as heat. It is just simply lost. By having a heat recovery system, you can ensure that at least you can trap 50% of that heat and can be used for solar hot water, or you can have a solar thermal unit. So all of these are the high level techs that, of course, the people around the panel can understand. But what I'm really trying to get to is all of these are not understood by the common user. You will be surprised that if I'm standing in front of a class and asking the students, millennials, have you ever seen your energy bill? And the entire class will say, no, we have never seen a bill. We don't know how it works. We don't know the difference between a load and an energy unit. So is kilowatts a unit for energy? Is kilowatts a unit for load? So there is a gap where it needs to be broken down into a very simple language. Now, just before I pass on, a quick final example from my side would be the Fitbit. Many of us know the Fitbit, the fitness watch. It has made walking fashionable. People are now keeping count of their steps they take. How did they do yesterday? How did they do last week? Because it has made walking fashionable. Before that, people used to exercise as well, but they were not tracking. Once you start tracking it, you get more and more in control of your energy use. Now, I know it's not easy to have energy trackers installed on all MEP systems, but we have to make a start somewhere where we need to really refine the way people are in control of their own energy, rather than just utilities dictating the solutions, utilities dictating the problems, and utilities fighting for it. We need the control for the people.
Corentin, if I may add on just on that final point, what you have to give is, through that smart metering, these elements, what you have to show is to the relevant people the relevant information. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that Fadi would like to know how much dirhams his buildings are spending, because he's more on the investment side, on the property management, etc. Whereas the technical manager of the building will need to know the kilowatt hours, as you were saying, which is energy, how much energy the individual items that are on the roof, which no one sees, but they are key for us to keep an on the nice environment, is consuming, and which one is actually performing out of the best efficiency point. And this is what the smart meter needs to combine that information and present it in a nice way. The same information, but presented different. Okay, I'm pretty sure that if the Fitbit would have presented a long list of numbers rather than a nice graph, that is already a change. So that is what I think those systems need to do.
So, Dr. Hassam and Pablo, you talk about awareness, how technology can improve visibility on the energy consumption and critical indicator for user to improve the usage of energy efficiency. Fadi, where do you think you talk about incentive at the beginning of the conversation? Where do you think we should focus the incentives to make sure that awareness plus incentive can drive in that direction?
I look at it on a three-step approach. You can either pass the cost, pass the costs of utility spending to the actual beneficiary, but that requires an industry-wide change of approach and probably easier said than done. Creating an incentive for tenants to save energy is the key factor here. The challenge is we've tried on multiple buildings to try to create an incentive for tenants, but as Dr. Hassam said, when you have a lack of individual meterings, you might incentivize, but without knowing exactly who actually supported you in your savings, the incentive may go to the wrong place. Education is a key factor here. As Pablo said, it's energy saving is everyone's responsibility. So education is a key factor here to have. But going back, Corentin, I think what the industry needs is just accountability. Yes, everyone is responsible for saving energy, but one stakeholder in the property must be accountable to drive energy and to drive energy savings, be it with tenants, be it with landlords, be it with service providers in the property. I think accountability is the key factor here. Dr. Hassam mentioned VFD drives. In one of the buildings, we actually installed VFD units at a cost of 50,000 dirhams, and the savings over 18 months were 550,000 dirhams. Simple, straightforward solution brought impactful, serious results. So I think by having accountability first, second, measuring, be able to measure. Third, understand where are the most visible areas of energy wastage. We give an example here. We had a building that we took over a few years ago that had 52 toilets. It was a commercial building, had 52 toilets. The toilets did not have any sensors to control lights, and therefore they were continuously being turned on and after hours from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. the next day, and they were turned on over weekends. As a property manager, we cannot turn them off because in case someone goes into the toilet and they get scared or they panic, it's not the safest thing to do. So by just installing meters, we saved 65% of the energy spending on those bills. So the way I look at it is, as a property manager, we are able to do 20% of the things that have 80% of the impact on energy wastage, starting with saving the visible first, measuring, doing the visible, easy items first, and then going to the likes of Engie and going to the likes of specialist companies to come in and really drive this last 20% of savings with their specialist solutions, with their technology, with their deeper understanding also of energy spending. I hope this answers your question, Corentin.
Yeah, clearly, and you rightly said, right? Accountability is critical. But again, I think behavior of the occupants is known to be one of the biggest contributors to improve energy efficiency. How technology and IoT can drive and improve the way occupants better, we talk about monitoring and giving them access to the information, but how we can help them to better manage their energy efficiency beyond the smart meters. I think Pablo and Dr. Hassam, you may think about how the occupant can really own and be more accountable to better use the energy.
On that topic, I think for example, DIWA has got this smart community initiative, and what they have is the comparison, the benchmarking. Okay, they compare you with peer to peer, so you will receive after your DIWA bill, on a couple of days later, they will give you your comparison with your similar houses. Okay, that is got a lot of science behind those little icons and a lot of social behavior understanding of how you can trigger that response of people engaging into saving energy because I can do better, because other people is doing better. So this is definitely something that is happening, and everyone, not your students, doctor, because they are not opening their bills, but whoever opens the bills, eventually they will see how they are performing and how they can perform better, and they give you even some ideas of what can happen. So, what can you do in order to actually improve your savings in the electricity and water? That is one item, but that is one item for maybe for tenants, for overall buildings, etc. The other thing that you can do on a portfolio, like for asset managers, for real estate investment trusts, for larger portfolio owners, is to do benchmarking with their own properties over time, because that is the easiest and the most accessible. You are comparing yourself with the time, and then also with similar portfolios or similar buildings in other portfolios. So it is that benchmarking. It used to be tricky to do, but nowadays there are more and more platforms that are offering that service. Okay, some of the sustainability certifications allow for that system to compare, to publish, and they score in a very simple 0 to 100 kind of ratio, so that people can understand it. Again, if you talk kilowatt hours per meter square, people might get lost. But if you're talking like 100 is the best and you are on 70, there's still way to go. No, so those are the kind of things that technology as such can enable you to do and to move forward. And those energy scores, they can get better by first these are activities that Fadi was saying, like this low-hanging fruit, and then you can start doing those extra activities of the energy audits and putting the BFDs, replacing the equipment when it's not necessary, etc. But I just want to touch into one thing that Fadi said about the incentives. And one different thing that we see when we do the energy audit is the immediate difference of payback in two exact same buildings that are, one is based in Dubai and one in Abu Dhabi. And the difference is the bill, is the rate that they pay for the electricity. So if in one place is 0.445 and the other one is 0.2, immediately the payback for the same conditions of kilowatt hour savings is going to be more than multiplied by 2. And therefore that is an incentive to have a realistic reflection of what is the cost of energy, because the higher the cost of energy, as the market will react, the more that the people will be will trim their demand and will react accordingly.
To your point, Pablo, we started approximately 9 months ago benchmarking our 100 buildings against each other. We were able to extract value from that exercise in about 25% of our projects, and understanding where we stand within our portfolio and buildings that are like for likes. The benefit and impact of that is huge. We're actually doubling down on benchmarking now and benchmarking analytics, because we can see the value that would bring.
Yeah, and the one that you identify that is performing well, you go and you find out why is that performing well, and that best practice, you put it into all the other ones easily.
That's exactly what we're doing. Yeah, we're learning from those buildings and sharing that learning with all the other buildings. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A point made by Pablo, a very relevant one, was the energy costs, because in this part of the world, yes, we do have centralized costs, but back in the UK, the tariff rates are different for each energy supplier. So one hardcore way, one hammer way of asking the demand side to reduce the energy consumption is a higher tariff. So they apply the demand side management technique where the tariff rates are subsequently increased during the peak hours. So the identified times of the day where people are likely to use maximum energy, and beef up the tariff rates. And then that helps in curtailment, because people's behavior or the occupant behavior is very difficult to predict. Even if you have a very efficient building, which is modeled properly, designed properly with the best, MEP systems, just by the lack of usership of that, it can still lead to a higher energy consumption. So awareness is very important, but then at some point, to take a more stricter action, we must think about a demand side management approach as well, which is to do with the cost of energy, because as long as the cost stays low, there is less incentive for people to save. So if the cost really takes a push, we will see an immediate aftermath of that.
Costs are already too high, actually, Doctor.
I'm just comparing that against the UK. So yes, it is high, but the price per kilowatt hour compared to the West is still quite low here in the Middle East.
Yeah. So Fadi, just to link to what you just said on incentive, what could be the ROI for an investor to invest in energy efficient action, right? This is always the question. Okay, I can invest, would I get the payback on time? I think this cost of electricity will really determine the impact. But have you been able to implement recently project where ROI have been a key element for the investors into a building?
Yeah, well, as I said, there is no standard formula because the ROI for different solutions will be different from property to property because of the building design, the cooling systems, the availability or lack of BMS and measuring tools, the life cycle of the equipment, the asset class type, residential versus commercial, and the management approach. In one of our projects that we consider a case study, we continuously measure and optimize. We were able to save approximately 2 million dirhams between the start of 2018 up to March of 2021. That 2 million dirhams translate to about 20% in energy savings. The initiatives that we did were the low-hanging fruits, as Pablo calls them. It's really, we were conducting timely energy audits on a monthly basis, and later on in 2019 we made some of our energy audit checklists weekly, monitoring the consumption on a weekly basis, and putting goals for the next week. Once you start trimming it down into weekly goals, you're more in control over your approach. Installing energy efficiency lights, turning off certain fresh air handling units, turning off certain chilled water pumps, keeping staircases lights at minimal, and so on and so forth. There was about 20 initiatives in total that we've done over a 3-year period. But the savings did not come overnight. In 2018, we saved 8%. This was the start of our energy management drive. 2018, we saved 147,000, which was 8%. 2019, we saved 26%. 2020, we saved 30%. And so far in 2021, up to March, we're at 5.5%. So the idea here is to measure and optimize, keep learning and optimizing and repeating that cycle over and over again until you reach a place where you cannot virtually save more. You've reached your optimum level. And at that point, that's where you go to the likes of specialist service providers such as Engie and others to extract value with retrofits and redesigns. The key is really to keep at it. There is the fastest ROI that we see is really just active management. There is no faster ROI, and that ROI can really be in some cases 300, 400, 500%. And we've seen that these are real numbers. Just with VFD drives, investing 50,000 dirhams and saving 500,000 dirhams in energy. So the ROIs can be significant when looking at low-hanging fruits. I think the moment you get into optimal levels, that's where I think Pablo can answer with retrofits and really redesign what the ROIs can be on your next phase after.
Yeah, I would add on that one that the projects that we typically do, they don't have 500% ROIs. They are on the lower end of that, but it's because of that, because that is when everything has been done Very rarely we found a case, and I think the asset managers, they are finding out that nowadays they can start doing things which is those low-hanging fruits, and then we come and we identify sometimes kind of some of these elements. The beauty of the BFD, of those variable frequency drives, is the affinity laws that they say by reducing a little bit the speed, it reduces the cube, the energy by the cube, and therefore the physics definitely help a lot into that one. Some of the other things that we typically do is using a little bit of water to optimize the efficiency of the cooling systems, which are air cooled typically. So they are called either adiabatic cooling or wet walls, depending on the technology or the conventional names. Sometimes there are some elements. I mean, there are newer technologies. Hassam was mentioning the lights. I mean, the LEDs are already probably an old technology, but they are becoming cheaper by the day, and they are well established, and you can still see a lot of lights there. And therefore, typical savings that we see when we put all of those elements together, mostly focusing because the largest consumer obviously is the air conditioning, the pumps, etc. What we see is returns of investment, or let's say paybacks, to measure it in that terms of around 2-3 years, 3 to 4 years, there or thereabouts, for Dubai projects, and then more or less double that for Abu Dhabi projects because of the tariffs. Okay, if we go to Saudi, then it can be more kind of towards the Dubai, because the tariffs are somewhere in the middle, but sometimes the savings opportunities are even a little bit lower, higher over there. So that increases a little bit the amount of savings that you can get. So that is more or less the figures that we see around.
And I think we all see in the region that there is government incentive to really drive energy efficiency. We see, and also super ESCO that are being established to drive this in Tarshid, obviously, and in UE markets. So we recently have seen that in hospitality sector, DTCM is also driving some new guidelines to ensure that hospitality owner developers are looking at the full energy efficiency and sustainability of the building. Do you think this trend of driving sustainability in the different verticals, in the different region where we operate, is consistent and a long-term approach that will change completely the way the industry is working?
To me, I think that is leading by example in many of the cases. So they start by applying it to themselves, government regulators, etc., facilitating the super ESCO. So we always started with the government buildings, and then there is a cascading effect of what that happens. At the end of the day, we do have energy strategies in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, the UAE, Ras Al Khaimah. We do have all of those energy strategies, and they have to materialize somehow. So once the market is reached the critical size or a minimum size and everyone is not everyone, but a decent number of people is convinced that this is not like too good to be true, then the next ones, the normal kind of businesses in the street, they will start saying like, look, this seems to be working. So why is it going to be working for that big developer and it's not going to work for me? It can also work, and it will definitely work, and they will follow, and it will be a pattern there of optimization, and it will take time under the umbrella of those kind of big directives and the push from the government. So definitely pushing those areas. I mean, you mentioned commercial, hospitality, let's say there. Industry should be another one where there should be a lot of push. Transportation, I mean, we are talking about buildings, but industry and transportation are other elements. So anything that is directed to any of those specific sectors with the aim of savings, I think is welcome.
I just wanted to add, if you allow me, Corentin, there's, yes, Pablo, you may be saving the return on investment maybe 7 or 8 years or 2 to 3 years, but one aspect that we need to educate landlords more on is that these benefits are forever. These savings are there forever. Yeah. What we see is a lot of landlords look at this investment as a short-term investment. They look at the numbers and they when you put it in terms of 7%, 8% savings, that number may not be exciting. But actually, when you're saving 1 million dirhams in energy spending every year, that means your net profits are increasing by 1 million dirhams. Your property value is increasing by roughly 14 million dirhams. Because when you're buying a commercial asset, you are buying it on the basis of the financials of that asset.
The yields.
The net profits. So when your net profits increase by 1 million dirhams, your property value increases by 14 million. So when looking at it from a property value point of view, when you're proposing it that way, the conversation changes. And I think we need to do more of that in our journey with energy savings. There's enhanced marketability. You cannot put an ROI to that, but you cannot measure it in absolute terms, but there's enhanced marketability, enhanced positioning of your property. Today, we're seeing commercial tenants come in and ask, what are your sustainability measures? What are you doing for energy efficiency? That wasn't the case a few years ago. And in the long run, every country is going to have a sustainability agenda. Every country is going to have a sustainability goal. And sooner or later, landlords will have to do it and property managers will have to do it. It's better to do it now before that space gets too busy.
While there is a carrot rather than a stick, no?
So yes. Everyone benefits from energy efficiency. You have social benefits, economical benefits, environmental benefits. It's win-win for everyone, but it's about just putting it in the right framework, proposing it correctly to get buy-in from everyone.
So from my end, the carrot and stick model works. What we are seeing from the academic sector is a welcome approach by the governments and the semi-government entities to collaborate with universities on research, collaborate on doctoral research in the field of energy management, in the field of decarbonizing cement, in the field of smart construction. So what we are seeing on an increased basis is a lot of collaboration from these sectors with the universities on taking real life research projects and really trying to create a benchmark model which they can then later be adapted to real life projects. That has been a welcome approach. Again, we have not touched in this conversation on the role of renewable energy, on the role of how on-site renewables can help. Can we have feed-in tariffs in place to a level that it encourages people to have more and more of their own energy generation? Because that's one part of the whole energy crisis as well. Yes, you have to reduce demand, but at the same time, you have to have some on-site generation to have your own supply as well. So, there was a very nice initiative started on feed-in tariffs a few years back. I think that's still in place, but we obviously need to refine it to encourage more and more people to actually use renewable energy, to meet their demand as well. So that was one point I wanted to add to this.
Thank you. I will now thank for all your input. I will now take some questions from the poll from the participants. So I will start with first question from Mr. Taklal Mato. He's asking, and please feel free to jump on the answer. So is the transition of IoT-based monitoring is happening as per the requirement to save energy and reduce CO2 emission, or creating a sustainable world? I think we partially answered this question, but you may want to be more specific on how the IoT-based technology to monitor the building is driving and helping to save energy and reduce CO2 emission.
From our side, we haven't used that much IoTs. We have used kind of hardcore energy monitoring systems because we are in our business models, we are doing guaranteed savings or shared savings, and therefore all the systems need to be calibrated and they need to be very, very accurate. But I definitely think that will give you more insights with the IoT sensor and the variety of them. We do have as Engie as well a variety of IoT sensors that we can deploy and we have used in other places. Maybe not as much for the sake of the energy performance contract, but they will give us very good insights. And the moment that you start seeing things, if you see like the temperature or the lights were on, you have a light sensor, and you see that the lights are on when the building is unoccupied, that is a very easy correlation that you can do. And that is not one of the meters I'm talking about. That is a few sensors here and there that you can definitely do. So I am completely supportive of that idea, and I think that that is got a very big role to play.
Dr. Hassam, you want to add more on this aspect?
Yes, so the way I agree with what Pablo has said. I mean, the use of the IoT monitoring is to eventually reduce energy consumption and subsequent costs. So the way, if it is applied in the form of just data gathering, will eventually lead to more awareness on savings. So we have stressed on it in the session that how metering or smart metering with the use of advanced data collection will eventually lead to more awareness about energy savings, and will subsequently reduce energy costs as well.
Thank you. Second question from Mr. Albert Quito. He's asking, can you please repeat the low-hanging fruits for energy management?
That is for Fadi. He was mentioning that, no?
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, again, I like to call it to have an active approach to management. The steps we follow when doing that, whenever we take over a new building, is first we understand the mechanical and electrical drawings and setup of a property to understand how the cooling and electrical systems function. Then we document the most visible areas where energy can be wasted. Yeah, so we look at storage rooms. You know, how are the lights on or off in storage rooms? Usually, you would see in every building walking through the basement, those lights are always on. Looking at the lights, the quantity of lights and the design of the lighting structure, both on the exterior of the facade. We just turned off 30% of lights in a tower in Dubai Marina, I think last year, because it was just too overlit. Looking at the number of lights, the quantity of lights in basements and common areas, etc., and seeing what can be reduced from there. Installing lighting sensors, I think by now this should be just a given in every single property around the world. And then going through the cooling systems, as Dr. Hassam mentioned, VFDs are a must. In winter times, actually between December and January, over the last 2 years, in about 20% of our buildings, due to the building design, we actually turned off the chillers throughout that whole period, in agreement and coordination with the manufacturers to make sure that the energy saving initiatives that we're driving don't have an effect on the life cycle of the actual equipment. And then understanding how we measure energy today, what is available for us in terms of measuring energy, and then going through what is it that we need to measure, why we need to measure it, and going out and trying to find the most efficient, cost-effective and efficient and fastest way to measure what we need to measure in order to optimize further. So on low-hanging fruits, it's really the property manager along with the facility manager and with the equipment manufacturer. Property manager should drive this initiative, learn, measure, take action, and then for areas that are beyond the property manager's expertise or qualifications, seek advice, expert advice from those who are experts, and then put together a medium to long-term action plan to conserve energy.
I would like to add one thing there, and it's also very, very easy to do, and that is probably the lowest and the cheapest one that you can do, which is to change the set point. Why do we need to have the basement or the storage room at 20 degrees, or why does it need to be the lobby at night? No one is going to pass by the lobby. 26 is a completely acceptable temperature for a lobby, 24 for a room. And even when they are not occupied, they might, since you do have IoTs, for example, and you can control and you can have smart thermostats, etc., you can have setbacks when the buildings have, or the not the buildings, let's say each individual space can have its own setback temperatures, its own control for that. And that will help you a lot. That you can use free cooling. Many of the, you can switch off the chillers, and there are many times only in the winter months here, probably January, February are the most months that where you can actually do this free cooling, literally putting the cold air that kind of cools down during the night, and it will be as cold as if it had been cold by the chiller. I'm pretty sure the Dr. Hassam, with his energy models, can tell you exactly in which hours. We do that on an hourly basis, but probably he can tell you exactly in every single minute when you can actually have this approach. And you can optimize by doing all those things. And that literally is a switch of a button of temperature, thermostat, set points, schedules into lighting, into operation of equipment. So all of those things are definitely very low-hanging fruits.
Mm-hmm. And just to add to Fadi and Pablo's points, yes, I agree on the modeling front. So if you have an opportunity for a new build that you can actually do an energy model, please do that, because it does tell you a lot about how a particular system is expected to work. When will it consume the most power? When will it consume the lowest power? When is it running on standby? Can that standby cost be eliminated completely? So if you are in a position to create a digital version of the building, that would be an investment worth making, because it does tell you a lot about how the building will function. And final point on the lowest hanging fruit there, which any common user can also adopt to, is your phantom loads. You know, so if I'm talking about users in a house level where you're dealing with home appliances, again, some appliances, even your computers and printers, don't need to be plugged in all the time when they're not in use. So, and the most common thing that a user can do for an office building as well is to make sure that devices, when they're not used, are unplugged, because they are using some energy in the background. That's the lowest fruit.
One thing I would like to add to the energy modeling, to create the model itself, it needs to be what we call calibrated. So it needs to represent the reality. It's true, with a new building, you cannot have anything to calibrate it against, but you can have similar buildings that they can do. So if you are a portfolio manager and you are going to design a new building, you can do the measurements in similar buildings, that benchmarking exercise. And I would agree with you, Fadi, the systems are typically oversized. We do performance of, we assess chiller cooling capacities, let's say, and typically we found those figures that you have, say, 25, 30, even more, as you say, 40%, which is, the results come from the model that is sized to cope with the 3 hours in the year, that is the hottest of the hottest of the hottest. And it's true, in that moment, probably you will have to sweat, but then the building doesn't need to be at 18 degrees during that particular 3 hours of the year. If it is higher,
it's not going to be at 100% occupancy also.
As well, yes, simultaneity is a very important factor.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it's always the modeler that has to be in control of the model rather than the other way around, because yes, some of the scenarios are unrealistic, and that leads to oversized systems. Yeah.
Great. So thank you. I will probably just take the last question. So there is a question around how we ensure that we select the right KPIs and prioritize the right KPIs to measure the efficiency of the building.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
How you can ensure that you select the right KPIs and prioritize them to drive the right energy efficiency within the building?
So usually after we complete the exercise of an energy audit of the low-hanging fruits and understanding the systems of the building, you would come up to around 20 to 30 areas of improvement or areas where you can conserve energy. In some cases, we have benchmarking data from another building to actually compare it with, and that becomes the KPI or the actual measurable goal that we want to achieve on in particular. It's for example, if you've got 2 chillers in 2 buildings of similar size, the buildings are of same size, etc., then they should practically be consuming the same amount of energy. So if one is consuming more than the other, the lower one becomes that becomes the metric, at least as an initial step towards saving energy. So in most of the low-hanging fruits are measurable. Turning off lights during certain hours, you can measure that. You can put a KPI for that. VFDs, systems, chillers, so on. You can really put it for, I would say, about 60% of the items. You can put a measurable goal and a KPI. For others, you just have to go ahead and do them, because even if you don't have a KPI, even if you can't measure it, you don't have comparable data to measure it with. In those ones, you can go ahead without having an actual KPI, or you seek expert advice to really tell you what it should be.
I will add maybe that some of the ones that people can do, even in their homes, they can just check their DWA bills and they look for that kilowatt hour. There will be a number followed by a kilowatt hour. So look for that one, the total one, because here in Dubai is about the slabs, etc. But you find the total one that you are paying for, and you can divide that by the square feet of your house or the square meters. That will give you a comparison. Okay, just get your neighbor, ask him the same question. The same villas in many of the developments are pretty much the same. They should be similar. Okay, you can do that with kilowatt hours. You maybe do not understand it. Well, let's get it with dirhams then. Get your DWA bill. Do not just get the electricity or the water consumption, the part of the DWA bill that is the electricity and the water only, and just divide it by your square meters of your house. In a bigger building, you can do exactly the same on dirhams, on water, imperial gallons per square meter, imperial gallons per user, kilowatt hours per meter square per user. These are the typical the typical KPIs that you will have. And then you can convert them into environmental factors with the emission factors. So you can multiply that by the emission factors published by DWA, and that will give you kilograms of CO2. It is already in the bill, by the way, so you can even report on those CO2 emissions yourselves, no?
And then use that data, how much savings you had from CO2 emissions, or what the goal is, because when you put it in CO2 emissions, that actually creates more of an encouragement and motivation for everybody involved, tenants, landlords, service providers, to really save on energy. It's much better when it's in CO2 emissions than it is in dirham figures, in my opinion, when talking to tenants.
Okay, great. So I think we have concluded with all the questions. I would like to thank all of you for all your input. It was a great pleasure to share your expertise, share your knowledge. I hope it was also fruitful for the participants, and I will hand it over to you, Maga, to conclude.
Definitely. Thank you so much, panel. That certainly was quite an interesting and engaging conversation. And unfortunately, we are short of time. But again, thank all of you for attending it. And with that, we conclude the property management section for the Smart Built Environment Forum. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all our speakers who are here with us today, and also our sponsors and partners. To quickly mention, our diamond sponsor, Nakil Community Management, our gold sponsor, Ijada and Serviu, our silver sponsor, Innova, Kaizen Asset Management Services, Netix Novus, Provis, and Soistier, and our knowledge partner, CBRE, and also our technology partner, Facilio, and not to forget our strategic partner, JLL, and innovation partner, Embel Services, and our segment sponsor for the property management section, the FSI Middle East and MRI Software Company. So thank you again. We now break for lunch, and we will see you soon for the PropTech sector of the forum. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, Dr. Hassam.
Thank you, Fadi. Thank you.